Welcome, guys. Welcome back to the third episode of the Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Gwent. On our previous episode, we covered gameplay mechanics, and if you guys missed that or want to check it out again, you can just click the link directly above me. On today's episode, we're going to be focusing on deck building, which, in my opinion, is not only one of the most important aspects of Gwent, but it's also one of the most rewarding and enjoyable. So with basic deck building knowledge, you guys are going to be able to craft your own unique decks that play very well, and you're also going to be able to take existing decks and modify them to your own playstyle or improve them. So, without further ado, let's do this. Okay. So here we are at the Deck Builder main menu. I just quickly want to do an overview of the UI and also talk a bit about the unique rules Gwent has in relation to deck building, because it's a bit different than a lot of the other card games. So this area right here is simply where all the decks that you have made have been listed. The area in the middle is all the cards that are available in the game of Gwent. And the cards that have color are the cards that you own, and the cards that are grayed out are the cards that you do not own. This area to the right is the list of different filters you can use to filter the results of the card collection. So for example, if you want to only view cards that you own, you can click on ownership and then click owned. Now it'll only show the cards that you own. Let's go into a new deck just for demonstration purposes. Here's where we pick our faction and our leader. Okay, now this is very similar to what we just looked at. There's a few differences. So this area to the left now, instead of showing the decks that we've made, now this is where the cards we choose will go into our deck. So for example, if I put Old Spear Tip here, he's now in our deck. If I put Scorch there, that's now in our deck. So this is just going to list the cards that we have put into our deck. The area in the middle is still showing all the cards, but now it is only going to show the cards that are going to be compatible with the faction we chose. So for example, you can't put Scoia'tael cards into a monsters deck. So the only cards that are going to show up here are neutral cards and monster cards. The area to the right, still the same. It's going to be all the filters we can apply. Let's talk a second about the rules of deck building in Gwent. So these three numbers up here are very, very important. This first one where it says minimum 25, it says you need at least 25 cards in a deck. So that's pretty self-explanatory. We just need to add 25 cards. This says minimum 13. You need at least 13 units in a deck. So some of the cards, the cards like Old Spear Tip here, that have a power value in the upper left-hand corner of the card, that is a unit card. Cards that have the flame is a special card. A card that has the chalice is a artifact. So this is just telling us we need to have at least 13 units in our deck. This number right here, max 161. It says your deck cannot exceed 161 provisions. So we have 161 provisions available to us. The thing is, in Gwent, to add a card to your deck, it costs a certain amount. So to add Old Spear Tip to our deck, it costs 13 provisions. This number in the bottom right-hand corner is the provision cost. It's the loaf of bread that looks like a football and the bottle of wine. So as you can see, if we add Old Spear Tip in, now this number goes to 148. So we have 148 provisions left to spend. So you always want to use all of your provisions if you can. When you first start out, you're going to have less cards, so you may not be able to use all your provisions at first, but you want to use as many as you can and get this number as close to 0. Now, once you've played for a little bit, you always absolutely want to use all of your provisions. So what you want it to look like is 25 cards in the deck, and 0, the number here, meaning you've used all your provisions. This area in the middle, this is your search bar. This is going to be your absolute best friend, and we'll get into that why a little bit later. But you're going to be able to search for specific cards, and you're going to be able to search keywords on cards and whatnot. These numbers down here is the filter for provision cost. So let's say we've put 24 cards in our deck and we need one more card. This is telling us we have 5 provisions left to spend. Well, we can simply click here and it's going to show us all of the cards that are available to us that cost 5 provision that we can put into the deck. Cool. So I think that's it for the UI. Let's start messing with a deck. I think what we'll do is we'll look at a starter deck and just try to improve on that and make it more competitive. So let's do it. Okay. So before we actually start working on a deck, I just want to mention the importance of picking a faction initially. Later on in your Gwent career, you're going to be playing all of the factions, but early on, it's really important that you pick a faction and you kind of stick with it for a while, because all the cards you're going to be getting in KEGS and all the cards that you want to craft, you want it to be very focused, and you want to focus your resources into that one faction so that you're able to build the best deck you possibly can. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. So starting out, the factions that I would recommend would be Scoia'tael, Monsters, and Northern Realms. For this example, we're going to be upgrading a Monsters starting deck. But honestly, I feel like Scoia'tael is a really, really good starting place, because the Scoia'tael decks tend to be top tier just about every patch. So although Scoia'tael is a little bit more difficult than Monsters up front, it's going to pay off in the long run, because you're going to be able to build towards these top tier meta decks more quickly if you focus there. But for the sake of simplicity, we're going to use a monster deck for this example. So let's go ahead and jump in. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking an existing monster deck, or we're going to be taking the starter deck that everybody starts with when you download Gwent, and we're going to be upgrading it. So let's see. Let's take a quick look. Right now, our leader ability is Carapace, and we have a handful of cards here. So what we want to do, one of the first things we want to do, is we want to identify what the core of our deck is going to be. Now, this applies to if you're creating a deck from scratch, just as much as it applies to if we're upgrading this one. So we'll kind of look through these cards very quickly and see what types of cards are in this starter deck, and then we'll identify what we want our core to be. So we have a Necker, has a Thrive keyword, and Thrive is boost this unit by 1 whenever you play an ally with higher power. Okay, cool. So this is a 1. If we play a 2, it boosts to 2. Next turn, if we play a 3, that boosts to 3. So as long as whatever we play is higher than this card, it'll boost. So that's pretty cool. Let's look at the next card. This has a Death Wish keyword. Death Wish is trigger this ability when destroyed and moved from the battlefield to the graveyard. Okay. We also have units here with the... oh, this one's really loud. There we go. That's so loud. This Solano Harpy has a Consume tag, and Consume is destroy a unit and boost self by its power. So the Consume tag synergizes with Death Wish. But in this case, we are going to decide that the core of this deck is going to be Thrive. At the moment, this deck is it's a mixture of a bunch of different keywords. So Consume, Death Wish, Thrive. We want it to be more focused. So this is where the handy dandy, your best friend, the search bar comes into play. And simply all we need to do is type into the search bar Thrive. And this is going to bring up all of the cards that have the Thrive keyword. So now what I like to do, and once again this applies to if you're starting with fresh deck or now, is just go through and basically add, unless there's cards we know we definitely aren't going to use, we go ahead and add these cards with Thrive into our deck. So Bruxa, we'll add 2 of those. Necro Warrior, we'll add 2 of those. And Larva, we'll add those. Drowner, we'll add 2 of those. And you know what, we'll add most of them right now. This Penitent I'm not going to add because I know that it's not going to be useful in this deck. We're not going to add Weird Cat either. Catacan we are going to add. Okay, so now we've basically added all the Thrive cards that we have into there. But of course now we're way over in cards. We have 36 instead of 25, and we are way above in provisions. We're 33 provisions over, but that's fine. That's fine. We're going to whittle it down. So the next thing that we want to do now is go through what is existing here and remove any cards that don't synergize with our core. So we're just going to kind of trim the fat. So we'll start right at the bottom. Archspore, that's a Death Wish card. We're going to remove that. Wild Hunt Navigator, it's okay, but you know, we're going to go ahead and remove it too. We're going to keep it pretty pure right now. Harpy Egg, it's a Death Wish. So remove the Harpy Eggs. Wild Hunt Rider, we'll go ahead and remove that. Remove the Harpies. Ghoul, go ahead and take the ghouls out. The Ice Giant is pretty good. Abaya, that is a Thrive card, we'll leave in for now. Alpha Werewolf, Thrive, we'll leave in for now. Thunderbolt, that's okay. Ozrel, that's a good card. We'll talk about some of these in more detail in a bit. Catacan, of course, Thrive. Geralt of Rivia, Old Spirit Tip. Okay, so now we've trimmed some of the fat. We're down to 24 cards now, and we have 25 provisions to spend. So that means we need to add some higher provision cards to try to get to 0. Also our leader ability. This is very important. So you may build a deck one of 2 ways. You may look at your cards and decide, hey, I want to make a Thrive deck first. Or you may look at your leader abilities, and depending on what the leader ability does, you may want to create a deck based around that leader ability. So in this case, Carapace does not synergize with this deck. So we're going to look at the leader abilities, click here to change the leader ability, and we're going to go down to Fruits of Yghern. And what this is order spawn a Gurney Chora's fruit on an allied row. At the start of your turn, refresh this ability if you do not control any fruits. So this gives us another Thrive unit, and that fits right into our strategy. So we're going to go ahead and choose that leader ability. Now I don't want to confuse things too much, but each leader ability, some leader abilities are stronger than others, some are weaker than others. So each leader ability gives you extra provisions, and that's what this number is next to it. So Carapace gives us 16 extra provisions, while Fruits of Yghern only gives us 11. So now you can see we have 20 free provisions, so a little bit less. But this leader ability is going to be stronger for us. So now that we've added the core and we've trimmed a little bit of the fat of the deck, what we're going to do now is we're going to add just our really strong cards that are going to complement what we're doing in this deck. Now, a lot of these cards are cards you're going to have to craft. Now, I did put a list below in the description and I'm going to have a list for each faction of kind of the recommended cards to craft when starting out. For all the factions, including neutral, except for Syndicate, because I don't recommend Syndicate as a beginner. It's very, very difficult. But for all the other factions, I'll have a list of recommended first cards to craft. And these are going to be cards that are cheap to craft, but are going to be super, super strong. So we're going to add some of those. I have, of course, stronger cards, but we're going to add those cards that I added below, cards that are a very good value, that are cheap to craft, but are going to pack a lot of punch. So we'll just go through. One of them is going to be Yghern, so we're going to add that. Let's see, what else? Let's go down the list here. Let's see, we got our Osrel. Aha, one of them is going to be Golyat. Yes. And we'll go over some of these cards later, but once again, these are just cards that are inexpensive to make. For example, this is only 200 scrap, but it has 10 points for 8 provisions. Very, very, very good card. Let's see, keep scrolling down here. And what else? We are going to add, add a Striga. All right, the Beast. Let's see, we added Cat to Can already. And okay, those are kind of our big ones. There are some bronze cards that are just great. One of them, we already added Bruxa. And the reason this is great, we're just going to look at this as an example. One of the reasons like Bruxa is great is it's 4 provisions. It's 3 power, but it gives an enemy unit bleeding for 2 turns. So 2 damage, basically. So already this is a 5 for 4, but it also has the Thrive tag. So this is going to boost anytime you play a unit higher than it, so you get a lot of value out of this. This could be a 7 for 4, an 8 for 4. So, pretty good. But another good card, which is in the list, is Noonwraith. It's a bronze card. It's very cheap, so we're going to add 2 of the Noonwraith. And also really quickly, I want to mention, with these cards, as far as crafting them, I would craft the gold cards. So like this Golyat we threw in, the Yghern, these cards with the gold border. You're not going to find those easy in a keg, so those are the ones I would craft. I wouldn't craft these bronze cards like Bruxa or Noonwraith because you're going to find them in a keg. You should save your scrap for the gold cards, but you'll find these pretty easy. You won't have to play very many matches. You'll start to get a lot of ore and be able to buy kegs and find these cards. But when you do find them, grab them because they are really good. Okay, so let's see. What else do we need to add in here? Let's see, we got our Bruxa, we got our Necker Warriors. All right. Okay. That's right. That's the one I'm missing. Is Carlo, aka Cleaver. Okay, so we'll throw Carlo in. Awesome. So now basically all the cards we just added, like I said, are very strong cards. They could almost work in any monster deck. And this card, Carlo, for example, is a neutral card. You can tell because of the tan color here. If it was a monster card, it would be red surrounding the 3. But this card is a neutral card. It would be used in any deck, which is one of the reasons why I recommend it as a craft. You're not going to use this card later on in your career that much, but early on it's super powerful and it can win you a lot of matches. So we're adding cards that are generally just super powerful in the faction now. So now we're at 31 cards and we're 30 provisions above. So we're going to need to cut a little bit. So let's take a look and see what we can cut. Also, some of these units I'm going to cut do have thrive tags, but the reason we're cutting them is some of the other cards just have better payoff. So we're going to take these 2 neckers out because we already have these larva. The larva is basically a better necker, and it's playing a little too slow to play 2 Endrega larvas, let's say, in a row, and then 2 neckers. So we'll take the neckers out. Let's see. We'll take the wyverns out. Abaya. We don't have any. This does have thrive, but we don't have any death wish, so we're going to take that out. Alpha werewolf. It's just not that great of a card, so we'll take that out. Okay, so now we've been able to cut a little bit of fat, and we're actually at 25 cards, 0 provisions, so that's good. We can probably, let's take a look. We can probably do a couple more things here. Okay, so I'm going to remove 1 drowner. And let's see, let's get rid of the Alzur's Thunder and add natural selection. 2 of these. Okay. All right, cool. So this is looking pretty good. We have 24 cards, and we have 7 provisions left. So okay, so let's kind of recap. First, we found our core. We found our Thrive core. We added those cards. Then we cut a little bit of the fat. Then we added basically our strongest cards that are still going to support and synergize with the rest of our deck. And then we cut again. The next step, the third step, is going to be to add some tech cards. Now, tech cards are cards that deal with the opponent's deck. So these are cards that you want to play to basically counter the opponent's deck. So as you play, you'll run into certain things. You might run into a lot of people playing Northern Realms. They're playing a lot of engines. So engines are cards that each turn they gain points. They either do damage each turn or boost, and they're gaining points over time. So you may want to, find a card to deal with that. So that would be a tech card. We already have a couple tech cards in here. One is this Drowner, which we got lucky because it has a Thrive tag, but also it has a deploy ability, move an enemy unit to the other row. So this movement ability, a lot of cards, engine cards usually specifically, will be row locked. So this Drowner can move that unit from one row to the other and shut it down. So that is a tech card we have. We also have some removal here with natural selection, which damages an enemy by 4, then spawn a drone and reach spawn a drone in a random allied row for each point of excess damage dealt. So this is for removal. But let's add some more tech. So let's say we're running into a lot of engines. Okay, so we might want lock. Lock shuts down engines. So we type in lock into your best friend, the search box, and these are the cards that come up with the lock tag. And fortuitously, we have 7 provisions left. So this Dorgray of Vol is a 7 provision card that has 5 power, but it also locks a unit. So we're going to add this. Now we have a little bit of tech, and we have 25 cards, and we've utilized all of our provisions. So that is fantastic. Really quickly, I'm going to pull that card out. I just want to demonstrate something else as well. So if you're in this situation and you have 24 cards and 7 provisions to spend, and you're not quite sure what you want, another thing you can do is use the bar here and click 7. This is going to filter and show you only the cards that are 7 provisions. So then you can go down here and, what do we want to add? What do we want to add? We want to add Dorgray. So there he is. So very, very useful. Awesome. So now we have a deck that is very strong. That did not actually cost us that much for the additional cards. Most of these cards, I think Yghern is the only card in here that this one costs 800 scrap to craft. But all of the other cards are 200 scrap or less. But this deck now has a complete synergy with Thrive. It has tons of super strong cards. And it's going to be able to absolutely annihilate other beginning decks. So that's kind of the thing. And to recap, find your core, build out your core. Second step would be to add basically your very high-powered cards that are going to fill out the deck and support your core. And then the third step would be to add tech, and then just cut all the fat, remove anything you don't need, and get it down to 25 cards and 0 provisions. So that's pretty much it. It also, so in this case, we took a starter deck and we made it better. But a lot of times you're going to start with a blank slate, but it's going to be the exact same process. You're going to determine, you might look through your cards here, and let's see, maybe we find one that has dominance. So, okay, dominance. Let's build a deck around dominance. Same thing. We type in dominance. There we go. And then we're going to add all these dominance cards in, except it would be blank now. And then after that, we'll go through and add, oh, well, let's add an Yghern in there, and a Beast, and all these cards that are just, fantastic on their own, but also work well in this situation, and then tech it. So that's kind of that's the way I like to build decks. But it's going to allow you to create very unique decks that are strong, and it's going to allow you to take existing decks and make them better. So down below, like I said before, there's going to be, I put down there a list of cards that are kind of your first priority crafts for each faction besides Syndicate. And I'm also going to post a couple of deck lists for upgraded starter decks. I'll post this deck down there, and I'll also post one for the other factions as well. And just so you know, I'm a bit biased, but the Scoia'tael deck I feel like is one of the strongest ones, so I'd really highly recommend checking out the Scoia'tael deck. But I think that's it, guys. In the next few episodes, what we're going to be doing is kind of fun. I'm going to take some of these upgraded starter decks and use a Smurf account and play against other people that are playing beginner decks, so we can kind of see how the decks match up. And how kind of go over everything we've learned in all of these different videos and apply it and see it in practice and win some games. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time. So adios.